Whether you're conquering professional exams or personal milestones, we welcome you to Beyond Clean's Confidence Certification, the 52-week test prep podcast series. With expert insights, actionable tips, and engaging discussions, we'll break down the toughest concepts in sterile processing and build your confidence every step of the way. Join host Sarah B. Cruz as she embarks on a mission to help you not just prep for tests, but craft your success story. And now your host, Sarah B. Cruz.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Confidence Certification, a 52-week test prep podcast series to equip you to take your sterile processing career to the next level. I'm your host, Sarah B. Cruz, and on this episode, we are going to be talking about the touchy subject of internship hours. Hello. There's nothing quite like getting into the nitty-gritty and the sticky icky with my test prep enthusiast friends. I'm so happy you're joining us this week, and I am really excited to tackle this aspect of our certification test prep. Internship hours in our industry have a lot of energy around them, we'll call it. Some people are for internship hours. Some people are against internship hours. My goal this episode is to demonstrate how you can help navigate gaining access to a sterile processing department and getting internship hours so that you can take your certification test. Preface, I am for internship hours, so I do want to spend some time speaking about how internship can benefit you. Also a preface, depending on the certification test that you take, this may or may not apply to you. So be sure that you're researching before you take your certification test. All right, disclaimers and all that put aside, let's chat a little bit about the value of an internship. While they are difficult to achieve, they do hold significant purpose and merit in our profession. When you are a person that is very good at taking tests, first of all, I am jealous. I am not, as we've all learned at the very beginning of this podcast series, tests are not my forte. But if you are the type of individual that can sit, read an entire book and study the way that you need to and take your test and pass it without ever performing the job, kudos to you, because that is truly a feat that I admire. The effectiveness and the ability to take a test is truly, overshadowed by those that can't do it. And I don't want anybody to think that just because you can take a test doesn't mean you don't deserve to work in our field, okay? Because a lot of the times individuals are working in our field and then they have to take the test, okay? So this is not any shade on the person that is studying for sterile processing and has never been in the field or has never looked into the field. That's actually the part I want to lean into. It is vital that if you are studying to take the test and you have never performed the job before, that you learn what the job is. One, it'll save you some time, okay? There's nothing quite like studying to become something and then you get into the field and you absolutely hate it, okay? I have met many healthcare professionals that have spent years attaining the degrees and the certifications necessary to work in their desired career field, and they absolutely hate it. And now they're in debt, and they have to do it in order to get out of debt. And it's almost like they've paid thousands of dollars to be in a profession that they hate because they just didn't research it the way that they needed to. And that's where the value of internship hours really come in. If you are going to a sterile processing program and you are required to do internship hours, it gives you that sneak peek on what you'll actually be doing. Listen, the decontamination chapter is very different than being in decontamination. You can learn all you want about donning and doffing PPEs, but until you see why you need to don and doff PPEs, oh man, I have personally experienced people coming into decon for the first time just walking through on a job interview and passing out because of the sight of blood or bone remains. Like, listen, the OR can't get pre-treating right every time, okay? So you're going to see some nitty-gritty stuff in there. And that's a really big aspect that internship provides, is it gives you that insight on what you'll be doing with that certification. And while the main point of our certification is to serve patient safety, the duties that we perform in our job is going to be how we serve patient safety. So if we cannot perform them, this may not be the best space for you. So by utilizing an internship, we'll get that inside view and see how we may or may not like the profession that we've studied for. And maybe save a little bit of money and time along the way if we realize it's not for us. I'll miss you. Maybe you'll change your mind one day, but no problem if you find out it's not for you. Okay? Because as a whole, the internship offers you that ability to decide if you even want to work in the facility, let alone the industry. Okay. So let's say you actually get some internship hours. Yeah. And you're in that facility. A lot of the times you start in the facility that you're hoping you can transition into a full-time job there. Right? Wouldn't that be wonderful if the place that you did your internship hour thought you were so great, you got a job there? Yes. What's up, employee pipeline? But let's say you're doing these internship hours and you don't even like that department. The culture is toxic. Everybody's kind of unapproachable. They all have a chip off their shoulder. They're a little rigid. Going through an internship in a facility will help you understand what is important to you as a professional in that workspace. And if you've never worked in a full-time capacity in a career, that is a very important aspect. While it's important to get your first job so that you can gain the experience, you have to enjoy working where you work. Now, maybe you just kind of go in there and get your time done and then you keep it moving, right? But you can't even have that mindset in a facility if it's that detrimental to your mental health. And sterile processing is already an intense field alone with the amount of burden and weight that we carry in making sure our patients are safe. Anywhere we can alleviate that extra pressure is very important. Internship hours also speak to the onboarding and training model that you can expect in that facility or in the next place that you're going to work. All right. So onboarding is the process of actually entering into your work and your obligations and your duties once you've been hired into the department. It's not the same as orientation. I know we like to mix these words up, but orientation is when you learn about the facility and their goals and how you serve their strategic initiatives and, of course, 401k and health insurance. Onboarding speaks specifically to how they're going to acclimate and incorporate you into the department. And how they do that is their training module. If you're going through your internship hours and you find that they just leave you in a corner to take filters out of lids or empty the cart rack and no one's really explaining anything to you, you've just learned a valuable lesson. You know that the next place you're going to work, you want to have an onboarding and training experience that helps you learn, helps you understand the how. Because remember, the certification test has taught you the why, but the how begins right at that onboarding and that training. So there's a lot to be said about what you don't want in determining what you do want. And if you don't want to be just put in a corner doing busy work like making linen packs or emptying unused case carts or, emptying the cart washer, all of those are important aspects to our profession. But if you don't understand why you're doing them, that could be a red flag that you're learning about yourself through your internship programs. My favorite aspect of utilizing internship hours effectively is that you start to learn how to do your job. And it really anchors you into the success story of our patient. Yes, all the different things we talked about and why they're important and what you can gain from internship hours. What's more important is what our patients can gain from internship hours. Okay. So yes, you can learn a lot of the things that you need to in your first 3 to 6 months in your sterile processing job if you don't go through an internship. But keep in mind, during that first 3 to 6 months, the company is trying to decide if they're going to keep you. So no pressure. You're also trying to decide if you're going to stay with the company. But don't get me wrong. In that first 3 to 6 months, you are learning so much. Everything is thrown at you all at once, especially if they don't have an effective onboarding and training module like we just talked about. So imagine being in your job, trying to learn everything all at once, and knowing that they could let you go hire and fire at will. They are literally determining if they're going to keep you based on the first time you've ever stepped foot in a facility. And that can be very nerve-wracking. Me personally, in my first 3 to 6 months, I was terrible at sterile processing. I had no natural ability to do anything in that department. I barely loaded a sterilizer right. Oh my God, I remember that one time I loaded a sterilizer cart and I was so proud of myself. I was like, ooh, look at all these items on it. All those items came out wet. Come on now. There was no room for aeration or sterile contact. There was no room for any of that, which we can laugh about now. But during that time, while I was also trying to get certified and learn the job and not get fired, it was a lot of pressure. Now, fortunately, I kind of came around and I got real good at my job. We'll just leave it at that, right? But internship hours can give you that leg up on how you're going to apply yourself and your expectations for the facilities and how you want to show up in our industry. Let's take a little break, and when we come back, we'll talk about action and how to get your internship hours. It's time for our mid-episode confidence boost, where we focus on a key sterile processing test concept. Now, there's no guarantee these concepts will be on the test that you take, but they are key concepts to the workplace and are discussed in the literature. Today we'll cover minimum effective concentration testing, also known as MEC. The MEC is the minimum concentration of a liquid chemical sterilant, high-level disinfectant, that achieves the claimed microbicidal activity. So this testing is specific to high-level disinfectants, or HLDs, and the potential of the dilution of the active ingredient used in the reprocessing of the instruments. So we use MEC test strips to indicate if the dilution is reaching the minimum level required for effective reprocessing. We always use the test strips provided by the HLD manufacturer. We have to test the efficacy of the strip. There's no sense in testing MEC if our strips aren't working. This is also known as quality assurance testing. It's also important to document performance and the results of the MEC. If the liquid doesn't meet or pass the MEC testing, then toss the batch and start anew. No playing chemist and adding more HLD until it passes. Be sure you're aware of the test strips and the HLD's expiration date, because even if the minimum effective concentration testing is passing, if they're expired, the product's no good. That's going to wrap this week's mid-session confidence boost. Good luck. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This episode, we are talking about internship hours. Now, the first half of this episode, we talked a lot about the benefits of internship hours. I am sure I missed a few other reasons. So if you'd like to share them with us, feel free to email info@beyondclean.net, and maybe we can do an internship hours episode part 2. But until then, one of the biggest complications that we see in achieving internship hours is actually how to go about getting an internship. Now, internships can be a little squirrely because we have to keep in mind that these are healthcare facilities and they do work with real live patients. These aren't dummies, they're not practice squads. And what we're essentially asking these healthcare facilities to do is to take us, the intern, underneath their insurance umbrella to practice becoming sterile processing professionals. And while that is a very nut and bolt version of it, that is what we are asking healthcare facilities to do when we want to be an intern there, or when we are even trying to set up an internship program. Now, some sterile processing programs set up relationships with hospitals that are willing to take on their students in an internship program. You can only imagine the level of professional integrity that is lended from those schools to say, my program is efficient enough for you to trust the products of my program in your facility. Because that's what we're asking healthcare facilities to do. And that's why it's difficult to achieve internship hours. So while they are important, we have to take into the consideration that these healthcare facilities are corporations. They are run, and just like our corporations, we have to take into consideration that these healthcare facilities are corporations. And just like doctors, they have malpractice insurance. They have their own lawyers, and they have their own ways of going about protecting themselves if the professionals in that space do not perform their job duties. So there's a lot to be said about just getting internship hours. It's not just. There's so much that goes into setting that up with the facility. So with that being said, let's talk about what you can do as a professional to achieve internship hours. Now, we can't control what a facility does or doesn't do, right? Just because you really want an internship somewhere doesn't mean that the facility will change their mind and say, oh, this person is so good that we're going to just change everything we've been doing to bring them in. No, that's why the power of the sterile processing programs to build that relationship is just so impressive, truly. But let's say you found a facility that offers internship hours. That's the first thing you can do. You got to figure out what facility offers internship hours. Ask your program if you're in the program, right? Sometimes they have insight. First thing you can do is learn the demographic of the healthcare facilities in your geographical location. Yes. So in English, what healthcare facilities are around you? Okay. In my area, it kind of seems like hospitals are like Dunkin' Donuts. There's like one on every corner right now. But just because there are a lot of hospitals doesn't mean they all belong to the same system. So while one system may not support your need for internship hours, maybe a community-based hospital does. Maybe a private institution may also be able to support you. So learn the healthcare facilities that are in your area and what systems they belong to. Don't be surprised if you have at least 5 or 6 in your area. My state's really small. We got a bunch of different healthcare systems here, okay? So after you've learned the lay of the land, dare I say, call the facilities. I know, it's scary, and nobody likes to do a cold call. I hate cold calls. Like when people call you and they say, hey, are you interested in this? And I just hang up on them. I've stopped just hanging up on them because I try to remind myself that it's part of their job to cold call me to see if I'm interested. And now I'm actually telling you to do that. So you can call healthcare facilities and ask them if they have volunteer or internship programs. Now, with that being said, volunteering is not the same as interning. Okay. So a lot of the times when you get into a volunteer program at a healthcare facility, it's not in sterile processing. All right. There are some healthcare facilities that provide volunteering in sterile processing, but you're not doing the level of work that is required to count as internship hours. I've spoken to many professionals that have started volunteering in sterile processing departments only to find out that the level of work that they're doing didn't get them the hours that they need. They were very discouraged, and that can be very frustrating, especially if you spent 400 hours, months essentially of work only to find out that it was, quote, for nothing. But let's change that mindset. Volunteering in a hospital while you're in school or during your self-study can really impact your chances of not just working in the sterile processing department, but doing internship level requirements in their department. So if you start volunteering and you're doing nothing that has to do with sterile processing, that's fine, because what's happening in that space is you are networking within those hospitals. You are building that professional trust through your practices, your processes, and how you show up to work every day. Whether or not you're showing up on time, do you call out often? Do you perform your job duties well, even though they may not be the job duties you want to do? These all resonate on a resume. And you're also gaining professional references. Yes, the people in your volunteer program can recommend you to the sterile processing department. And we've already talked about why insurance umbrellas and the facility deciding that they're going to take a risk on you is important. Well, when you are building that aspect through volunteering, you're telling the department managers, our sterile processing department managers, why they should put their faith in you or give you the shot that you deserve. Now, while you're interning in the hospital and you're building those professional references, reach out to the sterile processing manager. I have been fortunate enough to meet a number of sterile processing professionals in our industry, and I can't wait to meet you one day. But I have met professionals that started because they ran into a manager in the cafeteria. I have met professionals that worked in environmental that used to clean the department, and they built up the relationship with the manager and applied when the job opened. And because they had that formal relationship with them, that prior relationship, it really helped them. So keep in mind that these jobs that are open, that uniqueness we talked about in previous episodes, will help you stand out amongst all these applicants. As being someone who's part of the hiring process, I have seen more than 50 applicants come in for one position per day. So if you've had a position posted for 7 days, you can only imagine the amount of applicants that have come in. So many resumes, so many no's, and one yes. You could be that yes through that networking opportunity. Now, the contact hours have to be specific to the job, so you need to eventually transition into the department. So generally speaking, it's easier to hire an internal candidate and promote from within and transfer from departments in a healthcare facility. There's less orientation time. You've already been set up in the 401k or the healthcare aspects of the facility. So that move from one department to the other can be very simple. And that's a big aspect in hiring that managers consider, is that they have to hire the right candidate and then get the candidate working as soon as possible. That's why that onboarding, that 3 to 6 month window is so tight. Some facilities only offer 3 months for you to get that job right. All right. So there's a lot of benefit in already being in the right place at the right time. But this right place, right time doesn't have to be determined by chance. It can literally be you showing up because you started to volunteer and making sure you're in the right place at the right time. Now, when you're in the right place at the right time, you got to have your resume ready. Okay. So if you have never made your resume, we're going to go over some nuts and bolts that should go on it. Okay. Yes, you do need a resume, even if you're volunteering, because the benefit of a resume is that it outlines who you are as a professional. So a lot of the downfalls of a resume is people think it's this opportunity to tell some story about themselves that are full of emotions and feelings. The resume is your nuts and bolts of who you are as a professional. And even as a volunteer, whether you're a high school graduate or you're in your 40s, or maybe you're in your 60s and you're looking to transition to a different job before you retire, there is a story to what you have done, right? So if you're just finishing high school and you're trying to build a volunteer resume, write the different activities that you were a part of. What clubs did you belong to? What programs did you participate in? Did you do any community service? Because it's not necessarily the specific type of club or organization that you contributed to or belonged to. It's the fact that you contributed to an organization in a positive way that healthcare facilities and departments are looking for. You have to be able to tell them you're a team player without telling them you're a team player. Please stop writing team player. Oh my God, please stop writing team player on your resumes, okay? That is not the place for that type of language. Now, there's a lot of back and forth about the benefits of cover letters in our space. I'm a big fan of cover letters. We won't talk about those today, but let's talk about some of the key components to a resume if you're writing your own resume. I personally want to stress an objective statement. It's a 3 to 4 sentence statement that explains who you are, why you're here, and what you want to achieve that can benefit the company. Okay. So if you're writing on there that you want to do something outside of the facility in 5 years, they're probably not going to hire you, because everybody wants to hire a keeper, someone that's going to stay a long time and contribute to the growth of the organization, right? And it can be very difficult as someone who's long-winded to get all of that in 3 to 4 sentences, right? So really think about who you are, why you're here, and what you want to achieve that can benefit the company. You can get a lot of that language from the company's website. While you include these aspects of yourself, be sure to incorporate different aspects of the company's mission statement or their vision. That can help significantly. And then another component for the resume is, of course, how you're listing your experience. Okay. You always want to list where you worked, what your position was, and when you worked there. And when you're listing these places, they need to go in order from earliest to latest. So the job you worked 10 years ago should not be the job first on your resume. And with that being said, don't put jobs on your resume that are more than a certain number of years. I like to say 10 years. If you've got a job on there from 20 years ago, it's not going to happen. And frankly, it's not going to make your resume one page. And that should also be a goal that you're striving for. Use a legible font. Use a legible size font. No fancy fonts, no tiny fonts, to make sure you can get it all on one page. Managers suffer from resume fatigue, just like we talked about. One space, 50 applications every day. They look at a lot of resumes. Okay. So you don't want them trying to read some fancy script writing that's 8.5 size big. They're not going to read it. They're just going to move along. Yeah. So let's set ourselves up for success in that aspect there. I want to encourage you to bring your resume with you. I know that kind of sounds nerdy, right? But pick out your favorite folder, put it in there. Make sure you've read your resume for spelling and grammar errors. Do not ignore the blue and red lines on your computer as you type it. And don't forget to get it proofread, because when you give that resume, that's that presentation of yourself. So if you bring one with you, after you're talking to the manager, you can ask them if they're interested in looking at your resume. Do not bring the resume with you the first time you're meeting the manager. Don't do it. All right. And definitely don't try to give them your resume if they're in the bathroom or if they're getting lunch. Okay. Gotta do your timing right. Build that relationship with them. Okay. Or you can even send it in an email. Welcome to technology. Okay. You could always send it in an email. Remember, on your resume, you have to put your contact information there. Your full name, sans middle name. You can put your middle initial. I use my middle initial because Sarah Cruz is quite common. So sometimes with the B, you might actually get 3 Sarah Cruzes instead of 25. Okay. So your full name, your phone number, and your email address. If you have a professional website, you can list that also. Please make a LinkedIn so you can list your professional site. Yeah. You don't necessarily need your address on it. You can put it, the verdict's kind of out on that, but the main component is your name, phone number, email address, and or professional website. So that actually brings me into your homework. Yeah. So we talked about internship hours, why they're important, some of the setbacks, how we can kind of get our own internship hours, the power of a resume. So your homework is to make a LinkedIn profile. Seriously, I know you all heard Hank give this homework a few episodes back. So if you're ignoring our man Hank Balcher, I'm going to reiterate that. Make a LinkedIn profile and start listing your professional qualities on your LinkedIn. And don't say, oh, I don't have any because I'm a high school student, or oh, I don't have any because I'm a stay-at-home caregiver. Lies. Everything you do can be turned into a professional quality. So if you have been a stay-at-home caregiver for over 10 years or 5 years, list that and then write the things that you've done in it. All right? You've done more than help your kids get on the bus. You are a project coordinator and a task management specialist. Hey, see, you guys can use that. Go for it. Courtesy Sarah B. Cruz. All right, everybody. With that being said, I will see you next week, and we will be talking about how to surround yourself with the professionals that want the best for you. Until then. And that's going to do it for this week's episode. For more sterile processing education and resources, make sure to visit beyondclean.net or follow Beyond Clean on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to check out over 1,000 SPD-related videos at youtube.com/beyondclean. If you have any questions or comments for the show, you can reach out to info@beyondclean.net. Finally, make sure to download the Beyond Clean mobile app on the Apple and Android app stores so that you don't miss a future episode of any of the other awesome Beyond Clean podcasts. My name is Sarah B. Cruz, and you've been listening to Confidence Certification. Until next time, keep fighting dirty and pass that test with confidence.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast series are of Sarah B. Cruz only and do not represent the companies she works for or collaborates with.